will call our work session to order of December 14th, 2021. And our focus of our meeting is getting to meet and have a meet and greet with our MAC District City Commissioner, James Lawrence. I'll pass it to City Manager Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Lawrence was appointed last January, and he wanted to meet with all the cities. So really excited that he reached out and we were able to set this up. And it's really just a meet and greet. And Dana is I think, Director of Stakeholder Engagement, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
That's correct.
So, and with that, I think the Commissioner and Dana can take it from there and talk about MAC.
Well, Mayor, I do apologize for jumping ahead of you.
Problem.
But as I said, you do know Dana, and she's the principal contact for Richfield. However, in the very strange governance of the MAC, I am your representative. You didn't choose me. The governor chose me. And I hope he feels, and more importantly, you feel that he chose well. I am, obviously in your district. I live in South Minneapolis, and the reason I have asked to have this meeting with you all is, as the mayor said, I'm your representative, and while you didn't choose me, I represent you. And I thought, first of all, you ought to meet me and know me a little bit, and you ought to hear, what I think I should be doing on the MAC, and I want to hear from you. Most importantly, what you think I ought to be doing on the MAC, both in terms of the general responsibilities of all the commissioners, but in specific terms for Richfield. So, Mayor, I'll leave it to you if you want me to give you some background or answer questions, whatever way you want to do it.
Well, are there any questions from council members right now, or do we want to just have a little bit more context and information from the commissioner, and then we can go into questions? Councilmember Supple.
I have a question, but it can wait.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Looks like we can go into a little background if you want to share a little context for us, and then we can jump into questions. And I will end us about 5 minutes before 7 so that we have some transition time to the city council meeting.
Great. So I'll give a little bit of background, and obviously, if there are any questions which arise from that, or if you feel that I've left something out you want to know, feel free to ask. So I was born in Philadelphia, but my parents lived in a town called Lansdowne, which was right adjacent to the city of Philadelphia. And as I said to your colleagues earlier, I feel a particular kinship with Richfield because it is very similar to the town where I spent my first 18 years. I went to schools there, public school in Lansdowne. It was called Lansdowne Olden. Olden was a little town right next door. My mother was a home ec teacher there. And so when I drive through Richfield to do a lot or go shopping, the demographics are very similar to the town which I grew up in. It's right next to the city, and it was not under the flight path of Philadelphia International Airport, so that was different. Of relevance, I think, to my position, I came to Minneapolis in 1966 to be the CFO of Northwest Airlines. I'd had a bit of experience prior to that Carl Polat had asked me to join the board of Continental Airlines, which at one point he owned when it was Texas International. And so I'd had this experience of being on an airline board. And then later I was on the board of TWA right up until the time I joined West. I, had dealings with the MAC as CFO. I was there briefly. I got recruited by General Mills, and I spent 10 years at Mills as vice chairman and CFO, and also I looked after international. Again, during that time, I went on the board again at Carl Polat's request of Mesaba, which is a feeder airline to Northwest. And then I got recruited to be the American on the board of British Airways. And so that was like 2005. And so I was on the board of British Airways until a couple of years ago. During that time, we merged with Aer Lingus of Ireland and with Iberia of Spain. And so I was quite involved with those airlines. The joke on the board was when I retired from it ultimately became International Airline Group with various airline brands underneath. But the joke was that when I left the board, they set up the a route between Dublin and Minneapolis because I'm the board of two companies in Dublin, and I previously had to fly through Chicago or fly to Amsterdam and fly back. And it was a joke, because people got into big trouble in the airline industry for putting in routes which are, for more for personal use than the general public. And that makes sense. But the point just is that I have been in the aviation business as an executive or as a board member for some time. Currently, I'm on the board of AerCap. That's one of the Dublin companies, which is the largest lessor of airplanes in the world. We recently bought the General Electric leasing business, which doubled our size. So we own 2,000 airplanes. So we obviously believe in the return of air travel. So I'm not only a very, very heavy user of planes, but I'm someone who believes in it deeply. I came on the board at the governor's appointment because in the summer of 2020, after the Floyd murder and after the terrible riots and arson and looting, I was very fearful for the cities. I'm very fearful for Minnesota because if you have 20% of the air traffic, why do you need 100% of the hubs? And having been party to economic analysis of system, airline system, I've been involved in closing two hubs, and it's devastating for the city or for the state. It's just devastating. And so I wanted to make sure that that did not happen to Minnesota. And I figured I'd probably be a reasonable commissioner because I knew something about aviation. And just to be clear, while I work for Northwest, as it later merged Delta, I don't give a damn about Delta. I'd be just as happy to have United or have American with the hub here, but they're not going to. There's only one airline which is going to have a hub here. That's Delta. So we got to keep them. And fortunately, as things have developed, it looks like that's not going to be a problem, but it sure looked like a potential problem in summer of 2020. And I just wanted to do my civic duty to help, and the governor appointed me. As I said earlier, I represent you, but you haven't chosen me. So here I am, and that's who I am, and ready to answer questions.
Thank you for that context, Commissioner. Councilmember Supple.
Thank you for meeting with us. I'm not going to talk about noise because I'm sure you hear about that all the time. But since we're the neighbor right next to the airport, I'm concerned about groundwater and like the chemicals that are used to de-ice and that kind of thing. So can you tell us what you're doing to protect our groundwater?
Well, first of all, I should say I couldn't agree with you more about that concern. I live on Lake Harriet, and so we're constantly concerned about people using fertilizer, using weed killer, and that coming down into the lake, and and encouraging moss growth and killing off our fish. So the first thing I should say is I share that concern, and I understand perfectly that concern. I'm going to turn it to Dana, who has been with. How long have you been with the MAC?
I've been there for about 11 years.
So she's got all the history on that, and she is the point of direct contact. So why don't you take that up, please?
Okay, thank you. Commissioner or Councilmember Supple, great question. And I will admit that I'm probably not the highest leading technical expert in this area, and I'm happy to put you in touch with that person. But I will say that I know that our de-icing operation is primarily done at de-icing pads around the airport, and they're situated at the ends of the runways, most ends of the runways. And those pads do have a system underneath where we do capture all of the de-icing liquid that is sprayed on the aircraft, and we send it to a recycling facility where we reuse it. And so that is something that we've done for many, many years, something that is actually an industry leading practice that we have across the airports. And when we look at other, northern tier airports that do a lot of de-icing, they look to us for some of the practices that we have in place. And so that's kind of the extent of what I know. And like I said, I'm happy to put you in touch with people who are experts in that field within staff too.
Councilmember, I just want to thank you for the question, because as I said, I'm very cognizant of that problem, as it affects me immediately in Lake Harriet. But, I literally never thought about that specifically between Richfield and the airport. I am going to confirm what Dana said about de-icing, and we got the best de-icing in the world. And, I have dealt with de-icing at Heathrow, and, and I have flown into a lot of airports, and these pads and what the airport does is just fantastic. So thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Councilmember Troutman, and then Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner, for joining us. And I have a general question, and then just a specific story, just for a little context. But the commission, there is an airport police force, and I was wondering what your relationship was in terms of leadership for that force, and just by way of personal or professional experience, I had a client a number of years back. He was an employee of the local airlines, and they suspected him of stealing a cell phone that was recovered. And on that suspicion, the airport police left the airport territory. They went to his second job. They arrested him, and then made sure that his second employer was informed that they suspected him to be a thief. Ultimately, the charges were dismissed, but the amount of resources they expended and the way they chose to exercise their force, even outside of the bounds of the airport, was surprising and concerning. And so I just raised that just to just to say that as you have a unique position of authority and influence, could you describe the relationship as a commissioner to the police force, and either whether it's direct or there might be opportunities to influence and have discussions around law enforcement?
Well, first of all, I've got tremendous sympathy with your client. It sounds like, a terrible experience, and I have to say I've never personally been involved in things like that, but I got 28-year-old sons, twins, and at a younger age, they have been mishandled by the police, and so I'm familiar with that. Obviously, it's way before my time, and so I can't really say anything about the specifics. But I will say that were I to hear of something like that, I would certainly investigate and try it. But that's just wrong. And my personal view is, if you see something wrong, you got to try to stop it. As to the governance, we on commissioners, we hire and fire Brian Ricks, the CEO of the airport. So he reports to us just as we report to the governor, although we represent you. So Brian has the chief of police, I believe, directly reporting to him. Is that correct?
The chief of police is reporting to Roy Furman, who is the chief operating officer, and then Roy reports to Brian.
Okay, so those are the levels of governance, and from what I've seen today, or today since January, they operate well. I will tell you, every time I go to the airport, which is once a week, I keep an eye out on the police specifically to see what they're up to, what they're doing, whether they're doing sensible things or waste of time.
No, thanks. I appreciate that. I appreciate the clarity, and I think it's just helpful. It's a unique structure because there are several large corporate citizens that utilize those services a lot, and the individual citizens tend to be, passing through and traveling through at a great rate. So knowing the kind of the structure and how and I know it wasn't a specific officer necessarily, and for the record, the gentleman was I think 50 years old also, so he's not a young kid. But no, I appreciate the kind words and the clarification.
Well, if I could just say one thing real quick. I mean, it is an unbelievably unique situation that we are like the Vatican sitting in Rome. I mean, we've got our own police force, we've got our own firefighters, and there's positives and negatives to that. I would say, in terms of the police force, it's a positive that we control that police force the way we do. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Councilmember Troutman. Councilmember Hayford O'Leary does have a question, and I also do, and I would like to get us wrapped up in the next 4 minutes. So if folks can be brief, that would be great. And Councilmember Whalen, do you have anything you'd like to share before in the next couple minutes? No.
My question is pretty general, so I'm hopeful that a general and brief answer would be appropriate. But I'm just curious in general. Obviously, airports, air travel is a huge carbon generator and not one that immediately lends itself to electric alternatives or more environmentally friendly alternatives. So I feel like it's a weird position to be in, where we like that we have this vital hub. We like air travel. I use air travel myself, and we want to be financially successful as a community. We want our economy to grow, but that growth means more carbon emissions and permanent damage to the environment. So I guess I'm just curious, how does MAC think about that? Because more air travel is bad for our planet, but good for our economy. And how do you think about it?
So the first thing, we do think about it. Let me be clear about that. We do think about it. The second thing is what we can control. We are attempting to become carbon neutral. And is there a date set on that? Dana?
We do have a goal to reduce our carbon emissions by the year 2030, and the number is escaping me. I can look it up right
I
now.
apologize. It's not zero. Dana corrected me on that.
And is that the air travel or is that the building of the airport?
No, that's point. That's us. That's us. We don't control the planes. This is a little bit self-serving, but the best thing the airlines can do is get rid of the old planes and lease new planes for my company, because that is the thing which can do to reduce the carbon. And from my own airline experience, I can tell you, like BA is just working like crazy to figure out how they can reduce it or do carbon trading or various things. And so, it's an industry, it's an airline issue. It's really not ours. And so so we just have to look to the pressure. We're feeling the pressure, we're doing ourselves, but the pressure has to go to the airlines and the airline industry and Boeing and Airbus.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you so much for that question and response, Councilmember Hayford, O'Leary, and Commissioner. And then I will just wrap up and say, I don't have a question, but more of a comment. You've had the chance to meet our exceptional staff. We have excellent staff at the City of Richfield. They have been working a long time in partnership with the airport, and they have helped push the Noise Oversight Committee forward and really make.
One of you is a member of that, isn't that right?
Correct.
Who's members?
Councilmember
there we go. Yeah.
represents the east side of Richfield. So we're very proud of the work that Richfield has done to work in cooperation with the airport. It is a blessing and a curse to be the neighbor. And I'll just say, we are a great community with such great residents and employers here. And we want you to think of us not only as representing us in the matters of the MAC, but also as a partner for innovative projects, pilots, not just having the MAC right there and we happen to be adjacent to it, but really looking to us as a partner to help, move us forward into the future. That is what we're also interested in as well. And we know that the MAC is a huge engine of our nation, really, and in this region, but we want to be a part of that partnership. And we have great staff to help lead that as well. So look to us not just as a neighbor, but also as someone interested and ready to innovate for the future.
Thank you. We certainly will.
Great. Well, it was really nice to meet you. I know we'll talk to you again. Thank you for doing a meet and greet with us. And you know how to get a hold of us. We appreciate you taking time with us tonight.
And vice versa.
Thank you. I will adjourn
Yeah,
our
thank
work
you all
session.
very much. Thank you for carving out this time. Appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. I'll adjourn our work session and I'll see council and staff in a few minutes.